And it should automatically be recording. Okay. Allison, great. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Robinson School Building Committee for Tuesday, June 3rd. This meeting is being recorded and probably broadcast on WestfordCAT at a later date. So we're going to move, due to some schedules, we're going to move the agenda discussions around a little bit and dive right into the request for services document, and ask Lindsay to share her screen. So while she, do you have access?
Yep.
Okay. While she pulls that up, we've been sort of discussing how we can get our ducks in a row, so that we're ready to hit the ground once MSBA has their meeting in June. And the biggest piece for that obviously is the document that we will post to start the hiring process for the owner's project manager. Lindsay literally does this for her day job. So we're grateful to her for her expertise and confidence, really, in taking the lead on this. So I think there's a couple points. She's got a draft document and a couple points for discussion. So take it away, please.
Yeah, of course. All right. And did you say Mike's on, or is he in the room with you, Kristen?
Yeah, he is. Yep.
Beautiful. Thanks to Mike for pulling this together and kind of re editing it to reflect kind of a more Westford specific. So we started with the MSBA template, and then Mike made some changes. It's a lot to look at because the track changes are on, not at all a final document. And so what I've done is organized it to focus on a few key points for our group discussion. And I'll toggle back and forth because I've just got those outlined here. So the first one being, I'm going to pause on like the schedule because I think we'll get to that first. So like the first one's being, there's an area where we need to put in a conceptual project range. And obviously at this point, that is quite a wide range. My recommendation would be to use the SMMA facilities assessment numbers, but right size them both for the slight shift in size of like the size of building we're building, because I think the SMMA had us at like 350 and 700, and now we're at 450 and 750 plus the larger one, and inflate those costs per square foot to today's or to 2 years from now dollars probably, and put in, so it's going to be a pretty wide range because obviously we're in the event that we're just doing a renovation or the smaller building, but we also want to account for the potential larger building. I have not yet had a chance to look back and calculate those. So curious folks' thoughts on that approach.
Yeah, why don't we pause there? John?
Yeah, I was just curious if this if this figure that we're looking at here relates to kind of the all-in costs of a project or the costs associated with the services associated with this request, or like which number are we talking about?
Yeah, it's total project costs, John. So it's hard and soft costs. So construction costs plus all of the design, et cetera, costs. So the numbers from the SMMA report are actually just construction costs. Both, Steve and I and others, I'm sure, have the expertise we can apply and get an appropriate total project cost value. This is to give the firms guidance on just generally the size of the project. It helps them put together their scope of service and their fee.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's not as a binding number that we need to get reapproved at some point in time or anything like that. Okay, that makes sense.
Great question. Thank you. Does anybody have any feedback on Lindsay's proposed plan for that, to go back to the last SMMA report and inflate for enrollment and inflation?
I think may just want to be clear about project could be several things, right? It could be a new Robinson only, it could be a Robinson and Abbott combine, it could be something else. So you may want to define the project a little bit more clearly.
It gets defined further. I haven't had a chance to like input all of the specific narratives in the project information. Having, just received this last night. So I've edited it as quickly as I could. So that will follow, but the plan would be in the project description area to very specifically put what we are studying, the three options for directly from our feasibility study agreement, and what those three options have some sub options within them. And the firms looking at this have experience with MSBA, so because that's a requisite, so they'll understand that it's a nuanced. We're at a very early stage.
Steve?
Yeah, just on Lindsay's topic of dollar range, I support that idea. And Lindsay, you and I can get together over escalation projections if you want to help that out. For maybe others' clarification, Lindsay, is this just through schematic design?
No, they want like just, I mean, it's a little silly, like, but they do want us to throw out and I typically do this when I work on the charter side, just a rough range of what the project might be. I mean, we're probably talking like our range is going to be, 50 to 100. I mean, there's going to be a very wide range here.
Yeah, the sticker shocker people, like depending on the square foot of the building, like we're
Yeah.
$800 to $1,000 a square foot, so we're in the $50 to $100 million range. My question, Lindsay, was more around the scope of this RFP service. Is it just through schematic design?
No, good question. So it's for the whole project, Steve. They will like we are procuring for the entire project in the event that we move forward with an entire project. And but it is clear that there's an initial phase. And so the initial phase is what their proposed fee would be on, is like the initial phase and scope of work. And this initial phase is, of course, the feasibility study.
Understand. So yeah, I agree with what you're presenting, and then in terms of actual dollar values, I have no problem participating and helping with that conversation of escalating out.
Okay, great. Any other discussion on this point? This range that looks like it's in the intro paragraph? And maybe it will all piece together. We can always circle back if something doesn't get addressed. To Kristen's point about defining it a little bit more, we can come back if needed.
Yeah. So the next thing is the objectives on page 6. So then we go into the background, and Mike nicely highlighted areas for like mine and our collective specific kind of input. So, background, really just brief. This is an opportunity, Kristen, where we can put what we're doing under the feasibility study, how we got here. Here, this is page 6. Yeah. The project objectives. Here's a little bit more that I'm going to pull from the statement of interest on the background. The project objectives, they want us to list what our objectives are, and the ones that are highlighted and crossed out were samples from other that the MSBA provided. I'll make this a little bigger.
Thank you.
So I don't know necessarily if we have any stated objectives that we can pull from other past materials.
Steve, is your hand still up?
It wasn't. It was no, it was not meant to be up, but I started talking without taking myself off mute. Some of these I don't think we like. Looking at what you crossed out, I think they can be crossed out because I don't think we've concluded, or we are going to conclude in this service request, like the delivery method. Like I don't think we're going to decide right now, see if at risk versus 149 or leads. What I'm wondering if we should do, should we pull the request for services for like Chelmsford to see what they listed, because I think they just awarded to OPM over
Idea.
there.
Good idea.
And that can kind of give more parameters around it.
Mhm.
The community concerns I think is valid for
Mhm.
us, not just from a management perspective, but also to make sure everyone feels involved, as well as milestone requirements, schedule outlines, MSBA assistance with the MSBA participation aspects. Like those are big picture objectives that we want to make sure that they cover.
Mhm.
So this, I appreciate having no experience with this. I appreciate that there is some sort of boilerplate ones because, and the idea to check Chelmsford because these feel high level and I don't know what the right specificity is here.
Yeah.
Yeah, for people's edification, and if I'm saying too much, like stop me. We are eventually going to get to a point where we have to decide as a group, are we going what we call hard bid, 149 delivery method, which is design, bid, build, versus 149A, which is CM at risk, which is you bring a construction manager on after the designer to assist with the process. That's not something we're going to conclude right now. We would need more input on that.
Okay.
There's different dynamics that happen with that. And then in terms of lead, that is like building green. We collectively, as a group, with the input of the design team and the OPM, can make that conclusion later on. I don't think New England or Mass Chips is applicable anymore. It's kind of a concurrent parallel path to lead. I think lead is kind of taken over the dominance of it, and that ultimately has to get back to rebate funding and how much you can get, and it's a cost benefit analysis, which is why we don't like engage in that right now.
Sure.
From that perspective.
Kristen and or Mike?
Yeah, I would say we would want to note here, I think, that we had the SMMA report as well as the town-wide feasibility study, because that will inform both town and school items. And we might also want to put in here, I think the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee has kind of a guidance on buildings. I don't know if we want to include it here or not, but I think we have to talk about it as a building committee at this point in time.
Can you remind me the firm for I'm blanking on the firm that did the townwide.
Tecton, TECTON.
Great, thanks. Just for my notes. Okay.
And I think we can also go, this is helpful. I'm taking notes in the comment right now rather than putting it in the document. I think when I pull the language from the statement of interest and our kind of just a description of where we are, I think it'll come clear. But I think we only need 4 or 5 really key objectives.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on, stop me if I'm going too fast. Evaluation criteria weights. So the next one, this is page 8 and 9. So then the document, I'll just walk through the document. So then the document goes through a scope of services and we have to attach the contract that the MSBA provides as an attachment here. I want a table schedule for a moment because there's a bulleted schedule at the bottom, but there are some high level durations noted up above. So we can get back to that. Then it goes into minimum, qualifications, just kind of simply stating that the firm needs to be Massachusetts certified public purchasing officer and experience doing this type of work, which is important. So then the selection process, there's evaluation criteria.
Was there something there, Kristen? Just saw your hand pop up.
That's me, and I did have a question I wanted to ask the group, just because it does inform those qualifications, but I think my recommendation would certainly be to go above those minimum qualifications, especially with regards to the purchasing, to the MCPPO designation. I made just a couple of minor edits in there, but also want to ask what your thoughts were on requiring a, sufficient level of service. I would say at least 2 years as a designated MCPPO in addition to the 3 that it takes to get there. If you're thinking about going CM at risk, if we're gonna be looking at them to really drive the procurement of the designer and the contractor, the more experience, the better. I think that's gonna help you get somebody that's not freshly certified as an MCPPO.
Okay,
Because it is gonna get very complex when we get into the contracting portion.
Completely agree. I think I'm happy to add, like, we can definitely elaborate and add that requirement. I'm fine with that. It also sort of, it goes a little bit without saying when you look at these sub bullets here that they're likely to have had that experience, but maybe if we want to explicitly call out over 2 years of certification, MCCPP.
You have 2 years of certification, that means they've got 5 years procurement experience, and that's kind of lines up with the architectural.
Yeah.
okay. Any questions on that? Oh, I scrolled down, I can't see hands. Nope, I didn't. Okay,
So on the evaluation criteria, and I put this back in just real quick, Mike, because to Steve's point, and I wholeheartly agree, we should not take CM at risk off the table. But we also are not deciding that today. I started with just a minimum of 50,000 square feet because I think that's the smallest thing we would build or renovate, just for filling that blank in. Okay, so the evaluation matrix, is this, Mike, is this like a Westford matrix that you inputted in here?
It's one we've used in the past. I'm indifferent to whether you want to actually have points assigned, but the state law will require you to use the highly advantageous, not advantageous, unacceptable. Sometimes points makes it easier to tabulate that if you have a lot of criteria. The idea is that whatever you wind up with in your section above, you have a ranking mechanism for each one of those things.
Yep. I'm fine with this system. If others feel strongly one way or another.
Lindsay, I will say there's value to making it more complex, but there's also more work for you. So just keep that in mind. And the evaluation committee.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the formulation, Lindsay. I'm good with that.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to find in the document where it actually lists the evaluation criteria itself.
If you go to 6.1, I think. So 6.1, these are those are your value, and you guys can modify those however you want. Those are largely what was in their generic contract or their generic
model template.
So if you want to add to them, but each one of them, because they effectively become the way that you're ranking the respondents, means that much more work on you to build out the tables and then ultimately to make sure those responses are in their response and then rank each one. So
yeah,
there is value to less is more, but ultimately you guys need to figure out what are the important things you're looking for. And you can have all of those in there and then just wait, assign a percentage
higher
on so that you're weighting them, and then we just do a weighted average scoring across it, and that'll get you to your number.
Yeah.
so all of that gets set here in this document? Like
Yes.
how we're gonna choose, okay.
You have to have your evaluation process criteria spelled out in the OFS, and then you gotta follow it.
Okay,
Ultimately, that one of the reasons, argument to keep it more simple is you run less risk of really forgetting something or somebody in the committee not completing it, because this would be the basis of any challenge that you would have.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you pause there, Lindsay?
Yeah.
You said these are the model template from MSBA or from our
MSBA.
okay.
Those are the numbered pieces right there in 6.1 are from MSBA with a few modifications. The tables are from us, just as a
Right.
way to actually score.
Okay. Do we want to walk through
Through all.
criteria just to make sure is this where we would discuss adding or,
I think so.
okay,
That would be a
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I think so. And I'll just say, like, generally, I think it's important to get right, and I think it's important to be thorough. And I also think it's important to stick with what's in an MSBA template if it makes sense for our project. And so I think that these feel good to me, but like, let's walk through them one by one just to make sure we're not missing anything. So the first one is past performance relative to MSBA funded projects, direct applicable experience and demonstrated evidence of that. Like summing the number of projects managed, the value, was it on budget, so on time, no amount of change orders. This is going to be helpful information that sums up their direct experience relative to MSBA funded projects.
okay. Accidents, safety fines, legal actions. Okay, Tom?
One of the things from the library,
Yep.
one of the things that we are continually struggling with a little bit is outside testing when we get to the construction phase, because we're talking about that in 1B there. We might want, I don't know how you want to put that, how that would be best put in there, but we do want to make sure these people understand that when we get to construction phase, we will want things to be tested, things like windows, like at day school, roof, like at the fire station, things like that.
Well, I think, Lindsay, why don't we add B, in addition to what you have, working relationships with commissioning agents and third-party testing firms?
Excellent.
I think
It's addressed in there.
there's yeah.
Trying to think exactly where it was.
It's right here. It's number 13 with references, but I think adding it up top though underscores that a little bit.
Look at number 10 and decide if you want to modify 10, 12, or get rid of them and put them into a combined bullet somewhere else, because all of those deal with third-party commissioners.
Right, but now does third-party commissioners include the testing part?
Yeah,
You can expand it to include that, commissioning agents, third-party construction inspections, give examples if you want, roofing, windows, of course, roofing is gonna be a commissioning agent, but, any of your construction testing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can request in here that be a specific piece of their response, is all the different levels that they have worked with, that they recommend. But again, Lindsay, remember, anything you put in here, you're gonna have to build out the table for it, and then ultimately define what is highly advantageous, not advantageous, doesn't meet.
Yeah.
So I agree with Tom, the more of this you can get on the front end,
Mhm.
the better.
Yeah, so maybe we strike it down below and like like I think if we can achieve the same thoroughness but have fewer numbers, it makes our setup easier.
I would agree, and you also don't wanna, the more involved you make this, the more time you guys are gonna have in the evaluating committee, but also the more time you're gonna have to allow them to complete it.
Yeah.
So, how long you leave this thing out here, I'm assuming you're looking at least 3 weeks.
yeah.
Not longer.
Yeah, on the other hand, Mike, this stuff is things we have had interesting issues with the library.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Great. I give heavy weight to that experience, Tom, so I appreciate you sharing it.
And also, I don't know if you want the gory details, but we can swipe the gory details off the library. I'm not sure we need that for this, but
Well, I would say that if we haven't learned a lot on the library process, we weren't paying attention. So we should learn from
We're
some of
talking about
those.
Robinson, we're talking about, not Robinson, excuse me, community center and, the fire station.
Okay,
So I struck number 10 and noted it up above, but I'm leaving number 12 because that's like specifically to references. So we do want to make sure references, I think that deserves its own category. Whereas now number 1 is just general experience with all
All of
that.
yeah.
all- So the next one is thorough knowledge of the Massachusetts State Building Code, ADA, and other relevant codes. Do we want to specifically call out anything else within here?
Mass
think
building code pretty much covers everything that
Yeah.
you're gonna have to worry about.
I would take out ADA because mass building code is their own accessibility. I would just leave building code.
Yep.
And other building regulations. I wouldn't get specific to other things.
Okay. That sounds good. The next one's really important. Thorough knowledge of Commonwealth construction procurement laws and policies and procedures.
Yep.
That one is critical. I think it's important to know their experience with Chapter 149 CM at risk delivery methods, and in the event that we don't do a hard bid and that we bring on a CM, because there are lots of important details both during the procurement and design as well as construction. Number 5, management approach. So this is just how they are presenting their team and overall structure.
Okay.
So I guess one question to talk through is the sort of 5 and 6. Actually, 6 is more about the team. 5 is 5 and 6 to me feel like they could potentially be combined.
I would also add under management approach, especially as experience working with a board or committee. Obviously, we would want the CM to have worked with a building committee, but we want that knowledge, and then the ways that they provide information in a transparent and easy to understand model.
Would that go as an evaluation criteria or something they address in their cover letter?
I think it's a criteria. If they
think it's a
if they can't do
criteria.
I
them,
would do the cover letter.
Rest of there.
Oh,
One
sorry.
other thing.
Sorry,
other
hold on,
thing-
Mike, Tom, I think you were speaking at the same time as someone else. I missed it. What'd you say?
In terms of
Oh,
like,
Steve.
like defining a management approach and evaluating a management approach from a criteria perspective and like putting numbers to that is highly subjective and very difficult. I would leave that as a cover letter type, open-ended. They can tell us their style, but I don't think it's good to qualify someone's rating based on a style method.
what about quantifying their work with public building committees, like a 9-person committee? If they have done it 5 or more times or whatnot, that's rankable.
I don't think it holds any respect. I don't think it holds any weight because it's not about the quantity of people. It's about the personal dynamics of a committee. In my experience in dealing with them, you can have the alpha dogs, you can have a very collaborative group. What I think is probably worth quantifying isn't the individual quantity of people on a committee, but it's how many projects they've done involving building committees and subcommittees.
And I guess to follow up on that, after you've gotten to a point where you're shortlisting, you'll be able to ask those questions in your reference checks.
Yep.
And that's really, doesn't matter how much they tell you how good they were working with the committee, go talk to the committee.
Right.
Yeah, you'll find
It's
out
all
there.
self-reported.
Yeah.
And pull that piece that is highly subjective and very open to interpretation from experience back onto the back end when you're doing your reference checks.
Yep.
It gets you away from a challenge because that is something that's, like he said, it's hard to quantify. One thing before we get too far past it, I would strongly recommend against pulling out the ADA. One, I believe it's an MSBA requirement. ADA covers a whole lot more stuff that is not dealt with in 521 CMR. All the communications aspects and everything else that I think are going to be very important programmatically in this. So,
That's fine.
ADA trumps 521 CMR. So I'd leave that in there.
Okay, I kept it in.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't quite following where we're ending up with this with number 5. We're recommending leaving it in as written.
Is there like a discrete way to word it so that, like I said, like to everyone's point, that it falls out into a less subjective rating?
Number of projects
Um,
involving a committee.
just for my own clarification, just because I'm typically not on the PM RFQs, when we say management approach, this is going to be a bullet point. We're going to have to put a number next to it, right? In terms of evaluation.
Yeah. It's sort of.
I
go
would
ahead.
remove it.
You'd what?
I would remove it from. I think we need to capture the language in a different section because it's a little like level of experience, like experience with lists like your project experience with 50,000 square foot or more renovations and new constructions. Like it's an experience metric to me. Like someone who's done 65 projects of 50,000 square feet or more is more definable and more you can level them up better than you can based on a management approach.
But isn't this the template from the template? If it's in block?
Yeah.
I can kind of, let me make sure I was clear kind of in the way that I explained the scoring piece. Really, you are placing a subjective judgment on each of these things, the advantageous, highly advantageous. You're not assigning a number. That just gives you a way to score them based on those. So it doesn't, there is a level of subjectivity here. Otherwise, we'd be going, this wouldn't be a non-price proposal. So you don't have to be super strict in the way that we build formulas around evaluating. You just want to stay away from things that are too squishy. You can go a little squishy. But too squishy just it makes it harder to evaluate, quite frankly. So
then with that understanding, I would just leave it as is right now.
Yeah.
The thing about dealing with the committee, I can't emphasize how much importance that needs to be,
I think
because we did
we
have
put
problems
that
with
somewhere
that.
else.
Hmm?
I think we can put that maybe even in
Oh, okay.
the 1.
But
Yeah.
Sorry, can I ask a silly question? Isn't an MSBA project always going to have a building committee?
Yeah.
So
Yes, but the OPM may not have worked with a building committee before. We hope that they have, but there's a slight
I
chance
see.
that they haven't.
you could quite simply just add in that management approach, just one, a comma and working with various public input or stakeholder groups, whatever. Keep it vague. But again, this is going to be one of those things you're going to deal with in the references. When you check those references, that absolutely needs to be part of the conversation when you're talking with those towns and school districts.
I now I'm thinking about this. I think the management approach is a little bit more like what types of like tools are they using? What's their like format for budget sharing and tracking, schedule? Like how are they it's more of like a higher level general. Like I feel like if we want to specifically call out building committees, I think we do it up top in bullet 1B.
I agree.
Put it in
I agree.
B after.
or like, I mean, this says local officials. Yeah, like that.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Like without giving me too much context, I'm just having a hard time following what the actual issues are. So maybe I can provide better insight of my experience with how I would manage them. So what is the,
We've had to get rid of we've had to get rid of an OPM on the library.
Well, I wouldn't say we had to get rid of an OPM. I would say we had to speak with the supervisor and get a person switched over.
Yeah.
Okay,
We've always had CHA as our OPM. I think there was some
Personnel.
concern about
yes,
individual in
that's
this.
more precise.
So
Yeah.
it's CHA on that one?
Yes.
Okay, understand.
So I think we're getting into that's a helpful context. We're going to be interviewing a firm who will have people assigned. I think when we get to the contract, the negotiation phase, we have to have very explicit language that says that if we are not satisfied with the personnel staffed on the project, we, have the right to remove
I'll
that
have all
and
that in the
request.
contract.
Yeah, exactly. So I think,
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't get too caught up in the weeds on this because you do want to leave yourself some room for gut.
Okay, so
That's
let's
gonna be a lot.
let's start at the top for a second, just so I can make sure we're feeling like comprehensive. So we've got like overall general kind of experience, explicitly calling out some more parties. Building code experience, Massachusetts construction procurement law experience, chapter 149A experience. The management approach, to me, it is a little subjective, but I think, in my experience, there's firms that'll give you a really thorough approach to how they're going to not just staff the team, which is personnel, but also manage the project with, like, here's our sample budget tracking tool, here's our sample schedule, we're going to put up a website, all of those things.
Yep.
Key personnel.
Yep.
Feels comprehensive to me, but if there's an opportunity to tweak this language that anyone wants to bring up.
No, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
And you'll have on key personnel, I think what's there is probably adequate. You will have opportunity in there. If you choose to include it in the fee proposal, but certainly, if you enter fee negotiations with anybody, you'll be getting, level of effort statement broken out by hours, by person, different phases, et cetera. So you'll be able to get down in the weeds on that one a little bit later.
Excellent. Capacity and skills. To me, this is sort of a sub-bullet under key personnel. And it's more just like project team as its own category, but I don't feel super strongly that we break it out or combine it.
Yeah, they feel like they would probably be the same rating, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Feels redundant.
they're not gonna have any of that on staff. Majority of that stuff.
Oh, that's identifying any services to be provided by sub-consultants.
Yeah. I assume we'll get the job resume is what personnel they're identifying with the job. And then there's an interview component to this prior to selection, right? Yeah, we'll flush all that out.
Well, that would be a question I would have for you is, right now we have this structure that the interview kicks in after the shortlist. Which is how I would suggest keeping it,
Yes.
just to be respectful of everybody's time. But yes, you will have that. And I think both 6 and 7. Are you changing that, Lindsay? I couldn't tell.
Yeah, it's my
So
bad.
the capacity of skills and the key personnel, they're very similar, but the key is you need to know what they're subbing out. Most of them are going to be bringing on outside estimators. They're going to be bringing on outside firms to do certain things. You need to know who those people are.
Yeah, I agree with that statement.
Okay.
Sorry, I just deleted my. Okay. Okay, then I will leave it as its own category. Number 9, oh, excuse me, number 8, workload, that's important.
Yep.
Number 9.
Do we need to, sorry, on backlog, Lindsay, do we need to give them an end projection through?
Oh,
Yeah, good question.
Do you typically do that? Knowing that these projects, like we're talking 7 to 9 years.
They're not gonna know. I think
Yeah,
if we
no,
just ask for the next 3 years,
Okay. I mean, I want to figure that we get through construction, so, but I guess that doesn't really matter. It's a little bit subjective. If we don't need to define a timeline, we don't need to. I didn't know if it was going to be a criteria though, so they didn't fall through the report or under over report backlog, because the more issue that I see are these people like can't staff the jobs because they got too much work.
too much work, yeah. I actually think, I mean, projected workload, that phrase just speaks for itself. If
Yeah.
if they're aware of it, if they're under contract for a project, they should be including it. Otherwise, they're not being honest.
Fair.
But they can't project something that's 4 or 5 years from now.
Yep.
Number 9, pretty basic. I think this one's fine.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Number 10. I
Are we
like this.
only, are
Go
we
ahead.
only speaking to cost side of it? Is that the intent of 10?
For which one? 9 or 10?
Your new number 10 below lead?
This one?
Yeah. Are we looking, do we address schedule and understanding schedules somewhere else?
Good question. We don't. That is what is missing from this list, schedule.
Mhm.
So whether it's here or like demonstrating their knowledge that they can manage a construction schedule or well, an overall project schedule.
This is the only reference to schedule.
I would add it to 10 them as like
Mhm.
another sentence, like as well as experience managing project schedule from start of OPM services to final reimbursement by MSBA or something along those lines.
I'll just say feasibility study. Completion. Okay. Good catch. Financial stability is important, stability rather. And then references, that was Mike's ad, which I think is a good one.
Did we make a reference to legal? Any lawsuits are in?
yeah, it's at the top, a 1B or 1A.
1A.
Okay. I'm good.
Outcome, number and outcome of any legal action. Okay,
So we have experience, we have team, we have project kind of management, the tools they'll be using, workload, schedule, change orders, financial stability, references.
great. Kristen, I didn't see your hand, sorry.
That's
Mike.
That's me, and the one that was missing, and I don't know how the committee wants to address this. And part of this is me not understanding whether this role might be filled by another party. But in this specific case, a huge component here is evaluating different models of the school, different potential, different consolidation, et cetera. Is this something that the OPM has a role in versus this is going to be done by the school side of things? I mean, who's doing enrollment projections, all the other pieces that are going to fuel a conversation about the feasibility of consolidation?
Those projections have been done,
Okay.
but they should be familiar, the OPM should be familiar with those types of projections, and be
Yeah.
able to offer their suggestions and opinions.
So that's just, that was the only point that doesn't get addressed by any of these is this contract presupposes that essentially it's either a new school or a one-to-one replacement. Do we want something in here specific to experience working with different alternatives or working through something as involved as this one is.
Right, like, because we have multi outcomes, and so like whether that flushes out in their recent projects list or their references, I think it would weigh highly if they have experience helping, like you're saying, Mike, with a project like ours that has different, a variety of possible outcomes. And
Yeah, because that's just the one thing that kind of jumps out is this type of a OFS really is tailored towards a known outcome.
right.
I'm thinking, I like this. I mean, part of me doesn't want to, I think we should include it. I don't want to put too much emphasis on the OPM's scope of work being like the one driving this, only because they are expensive. And we want them focused really on like process and technical aspects of the work. Whereas like our design team and this subcommittee or this committee plus the school and the community, like there's just so many different folks leading that work. But I think maybe if we put in 1C, experience with MSBA feasibility studies, something about multiple.
Or you could choose to address it in the introduction of the document and then have them reference something in their cover letter. Just to get a sense that, hey, we've been involved with things that nobody really knows where it's going.
Sure.
That's ultimately what you're after.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are going to call that out in the description and background, but I do like the idea of having it be an evaluation criteria because I do think, I'm thinking about if we're sitting down in an interview and we hear from an OPM firm that's like, oh yeah, I just went through this with this school district and here's what they did and just the lessons learned. I'm going to look more favorably on them than someone who said, the last 5 of my projects have been cut and dry
Yeah.
replacements.
It doesn't have to be terribly specific. You're using these criteria to give them cues about what you think are important so that they know what to pitch.
Do we, does a separate document come out over potential Q&As for the interview after the shortlist?
Doesn't explicitly say that we need to have Q&A to send out any, but I think we best practice would be to send a list of guiding questions for firms to respond to.
Yeah, and that is something you'll deal with. We can make the edits in the selection process narrative, which is the next one down. But I only say you're going to do that if you actually plan to do that. That you're planning to have structured you have to have structured interviews, but when you're going to send those questions out to the shortlist firms, et cetera, we can lay all that stuff out in 6.2.
Yeah.
I guess the only reason where I was going with that is it's a feasibility study, so everything has multiple outcomes in a feasibility study.
Fair point.
Right, that's the point of the study, so it's like I wouldn't go any more specific because I think it's too hard to a short list based on that. I would deal with that aspect, which I think people are trying to allude to, over the multiple site conversations and consolidation of buildings.
Yeah.
I would handle that after the short list.
Yeah, that's a good point, Steve. I'm good with not calling it out as a specific criteria then.
Yep.
If others are.
I'm okay with that. That makes sense to me.
So in the interest of time, and I think this has been a really helpful discussion. Do we feel confident that what's listed here is adequate? Okay. With that, I've got a couple more. And this gets into, okay, so here we go. This gets into the committee itself and our schedule. So moving on. The process is we, as a committee, need to decide whether we're going to have create a subcommittee. Who is going to be the selection committee? We need to create a subcommittee. I think talking through the process of creating that committee is important, but to get through the process itself, we will receive the responses from the firms, shortlist, evaluate them using the criteria and the matrix, shortlist, invite the shortlisted respondents to an interview, and then from there, we will, oh, here we go. It says town may elect to submit follow-up questions right here. If we want to do a second round of interviews, we can. We will then choose a finalist to negotiate a fee proposal with. And then from there, once we get to finalization, we then bring that to the MSBA for their approval.
Okay. Who's been chomping at the bit to do all of that Lindsay explained? I mean, do you want to talk about oh, great. Okay. Your
Yeah,
timing.
maybe talk about schedule first.
Sure. If you've got a long trip this summer, this may not be for you.
Lindsay,
So
is that scheduled, like what I'm seeing on the screen, is that realistic or?
I don't know. That's what I want to start with. I started
Okay.
drafting some dates. We know our starting point is June 18th when the MSBA is voting to approve our feasibility study agreement. After that approval, we are free to post for the OPM. So I think June 25th, having it be live because there's a week lag time is really aggressive. But I think July 2nd would be the soonest that we would have it go live after the June 18th meeting. And then from there, everything else follows.
We have to publish in the central register, right?
Correct. And the deadline is Thursdays at 4 for the following Wednesday's publication.
So if we're July 2nd, we're really pencils down and done for June 26th.
Correct. So it would need to we'd need to have this document ready to go live by June 26th, June 25th.
And it was the 18th as the vote?
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, like we're going to keep going here. What are we actually filling in after June 18th?
Nothing.
The go date, right?
Right.
Just to fine tuning the schedule.
That's why we're just starting now to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, if I'm correct, and if I think Mike, technically we don't have to have it ready until the morning of July 2nd because you post just a blurb on the central register, and then the document itself doesn't folks have to email somebody to ask for it.
Yeah.
So we have till July 1st to finalize this document.
Okay.
At the MSBA, I think we should clarify with our team that if they want to review the RFS before we have it go out.
Kristen, do you want to email Maria that question?
If they need to review it before it goes out?
Yep.
Yep.
They have to review it.
There we go.
Yeah.
So maybe what their turnaround time is so that we can plan backwards.
Right. And I know, I hate using holiday and vacation as an excuse, but a 3-week turnaround in July is really, really tight.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
So yeah, I mean, that's my open question. I think by law, you only need to have it out for 2 weeks. You're thinking we should have it out for at least 3, maybe more.
Yeah.
I would leave it
At
out
least
for
3.5, 4 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. Are we allowed to publish an addendum to extend the date?
Yes.
Yes,
So
but
the philosophy we use on our side when we pre-qualify and do all that is we keep it tight and then give the extension because everyone always asks for an extension. So if you give them 4, they're going to ask for 5. So that's my only precaution why I say I'd rather keep it tight and then give the extension.
But do you want to get the number of responses that you want for this one, since this is July?
So what are we saying here? 3 weeks?
July 23rd would be 3 weeks. And then these dates would shift because I only had it at 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with 3 weeks. I'm also fine if people are uncomfortable and want to go to 4. If we go to 4, they're going to ask for 5, based on what I hear in the market.
Yeah, no,
But-
I understand, Stephen.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. Kristen?
I think you're tight with your, responses due July 23rd and then shortlist July 23rd, 22nd. We're gonna need at least a week to go through these and rank them for the shortlist.
Yeah, I would say 2 weeks for the short list.
Okay.
Okay, so responses due July 23rd, that's 3 weeks.
It's really not 3 weeks though, because you do have the holiday. I wonder what's the end of that week?
The 25th, have it due on the Friday.
Yeah,
Okay, July 25th.
at noon.
Okay. Shortlisted, I'll just put the end date on here. August 6th would be, or rather, August 8th would be 2 weeks.
Lindsay, if you have a hard stop, I can walk us through the schedule.
I'm okay. I can stay on. I rearranged things.
Thank you.
Thank you though. So August 8th would be 2 weeks. So then our interviews would be the
You need
week
to
of,
give them at least a week to prepare for an interview or
I
at
would
least
give them-
5.
I would give them 3 weeks.
What, Steve?
I would give them 2 to 3 weeks.
that's too much, in my
Really?
opinion.
Well, I mean, gave me 3 weeks for the other school.
It's different.
Okay, fair enough.
Hopefully, well, I wonder how many OPM firms are on our public call here. Sorry. You're getting 2 weeks. No, I mean, in all honesty,
It just gets down to the level of quality of a presentation you're going to get.
understood, but understood. A lot of firms, though, are prepared to interview when they submit their proposal. I'm also being mindful of the September 8th MSBA review panel date. Not that we need to stick,
Oh,
but like it would be great if we could hit that because then we're able to move forward with the design selection in the months of, and I think we're going to need at least 2 full months for that in September and October.
Sorry, let me just see if Chris has if he's jumping off.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, Lindsay,
okay.
based on that, the September 8th, do we know what type of
Yeah.
timeline we have to have everything to make it to their panels? Because we've already kind of learned that.
I know that's a question. So I think 2 open questions to the MSBA are, how long do they need to review our RFS document before we
Yep.
can post it? And how long do they need to review our final selection before they put us on their panel?
Yep. Do you have both of those, Kristen?
What does the review of the final selection entail?
We don't know.
I'm
We're-
not sure.
That's what we're saying, because last time
We don't know if
thought
that
we were on
entails
there.
a negotiated fee and a contract or.
I believe so. Let me pull up another source. I don't know for sure. We have to ask them.
why don't we just pencil in the date for now? We're not final, so we can ask the questions, then come back and revisit.
And,
Yeah.
and I think what's in front of us right now is kind of nailing down for our personal schedules, who's willing to do this, and the steps that come after that with the MSBA
Yep.
are out of our control a little bit. So
Yeah.
what I'm really looking forward to understand and put on everyone's radar is whether they're committing to review these evaluation criteria from these responses between July 25th and August 8th. Did I summarize that right? Because I've got like a tiny screen here.
And the interviews.
Yeah, sorry, and the interviews.
I think it's like 3 weeks. 3 or 4 weeks. Well, responses, and then you're saying that you want a pause till the interviews.
Actually, we need a pause. Yeah. So if we're shortlisting by the 8th, we wouldn't interview folks the week of the 11th. We could have interviews the following week, the week of the 18th and the week of the 25th. That would be my suggestion.
How much time are you giving them to prepare?
Um,
And Lindsay, do we typically do just one day of interviews or is it multiple days?
it depends on folks' schedules, but I
Yeah.
personally like to knock them all out in one day.
Yeah, I mean, I can, people want me to, I don't have a problem. I can commit to that time frame. Someone else's GMP may be affected a little bit, but.
If I can
put my
multitask, you
name in the
can.
hat.
I can also commit.
Yeah, I can as well.
Okay.
Can,
It's okay if you want to take more time. Sorry, Chris.
I was just gonna ask, can you just again remind, like, clearly the interviews, we'd all be together when we're talking about committing to reviewing things, because that time frame looks pretty good. I just have a couple of like 1 day things that I have to do, but we're gonna be reviewing
Well-
those things on our own.
Individually, yeah, you can
Yeah.
take it on vacation, some light reading.
Well, and not everybody on the committee needs to be on the review panel for the short list. It could be 3 or 4 people. It does not have to be everyone. It's usually better served if just it's a small group, and then the small group brings the top 2 or 3 to the overall committee for the interviews.
Well, you don't even have to have the whole committee do the interviews.
You don't, you could have the subcommittee do the interviews.
I think that's what we're talking about here.
I'm assuming that we're gonna, during this time period, the people who are going to do this are reviewing it offline. And there's probably 1 or 2 meetings we're gonna get on to discuss our thoughts and then reach a conclusion.
That's my understanding.
And based on it being summer, and my inclination of less time between all these steps, but that might not be practical. In this instance, we may be bumping to the October 6th review meeting.
If we do, you might want to give more time in there, but yeah.
Yeah. I think let's hear from them,
Yeah.
what
Yep.
timing they need.
Mhm.
But yeah, September 8th is starting to feel tight. Which is okay, we've got to do this right.
I agree with that. Seeing some head nods.
Yeah.
Okay. This feels penciled in, which is good. For next steps, if Mike and Lindsay can clean up the doc and maybe can it be sent out for another final read through? Right, because the SMMA numbers, the SOI, sort of copy and paste stuff there. My notes are sort of all over the place today. The idea of checking Chelmsford, like, so some of that, if Lindsay and Mike can still align over the next couple of days, and maybe send something out to the committee for a read through. Obviously this took up the full meeting today. And so, and I don't want to rush it, like to Lindsay's point. So do people feel like we should meet again on the 10th or the 17th and check back in?
I think, Valerie, we should probably meet on the 17th because this committee should review and vote to issue the RFS
In a final state. Okay,
in a final state.
okay. Everyone good with the 17th? Same time, same,
Yeah, I'm good.
okay. And then I think as we get that timeline from the MSBA and information, we'll be able to kind of set more a meeting schedule over the summer, and so everybody can kind of plan accordingly and have that on their radar. I will briefly give a quick update on the website. For reasons that I can't pretend to understand, it will not be a Google site. It will be a WordPress site, but we have a registered domain, robinsonmsba.org. We have a I don't know the word. I'm forgetting the word. Like a play around with site before it goes live to help build up. Kathy, Allison, and I are willing to do that. And so we hope to have more of an update by the 17th on that, and maybe even a draft, a website live. So that's the update on that. We did, if you weren't available to join us, we did have an executive session on site locations. And because that's protected by confidentiality, I can't speak to the topics that were discussed, but if you need an update, let me know. And then as that might need a follow-up step, we'll keep the full committee, just keep giving an update on that. And we've talked about the document and the selection process already. So am I missing anything? So Kristen's got some questions for MSBA, and Lindsay and Mike are going to chat about the document, and we will plan to meet on the 17th. John?
I just had a question for Kristen. Is the 17th the problem with some negotiations we have scheduled?
Good question. I said I could make that meeting without my schedule review. Our negotiations start at 1,
Yeah.
so I could be on for, the first half hour to at least do the vote.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got to be in that
Everything
too.
by then.
Yeah.
Okay. So we could tap Tom Clay to step into.
Yeah, Tom really should be doing this. I'm just the alternate.
You're a great alternate, John. Don't just discount yourself. We'll take you. Okay. Does anybody not feel comfortable taking a quick vote on meeting minutes from April 29th, just to keep us on a good cadence with those? I'm seeing head nods.
Yeah,
Okay,
they
I'll
look
take,
good.
thank you. A motion, please,
So moved.
John, and a second.
Second.
Allison, thank you. Okay, all in favor of approving meeting minutes from April 29th? Tom W.
Aye.
I'm an aye. Kevin?
Aye.
Lindsay?
Aye.
Steve?
Abstain, just I wasn't there.
Yep. And John?
Aye.
John Leffers?
Aye.
Jeff Goodwin? Kristen?
Aye.
Dr. Chu?
Aye.
And Allison.
Aye.
Okay, great. So those are good. And now a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thanks,
great
everyone.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Take care.